Hi, I'm Susan, and welcome to episode 41 of Susan Stanley Stitch in Time. On this channel, I talk about cross-stitch, quilting, textiles, and sewing notions and methods from the past, and I share my projects with you. And this episode is going to be really exciting and festive and fun. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about future plans. I'm going to talk about future projects, new starts. I want to share with you my WIPS, and I have some doll quilt updates. I have a quilt behind me to talk about. I have a festive sewing decoration that I know you're going to love. You had a teaser in the beginning. And I have some new acquisitions and a shop update. I have a lovely comment from one of you wonderful viewers. And let's get started. So this is a time of year where I become very reflective, and as we experience this change of season and we see all the plants kind of going back into themselves and restoring their nutrients and their strength, I kind of feel like I do the same thing. In the northern hemisphere here, it's winter, it's a winter solstice, it's a time of celebrations, it's a time of holidays, and like I said, for me, it's a time to just become very reflective and quiet. I love this reflective time of year. I just find it so restoring, and I just like becoming kind of dormant within myself and thinking about where I've been and where I'm going. It's a time where I'm so happy for all of my haul, all of my collections, because I can just draw on what I have right here in hand. And it reminds me of earlier days when harvest was such a necessary part of life, because it was the time of gathering in and getting ready for this freezing cold season where nobody wants to go out, including me. I don't want to go out. It's cold and rainy, and I just want to use what I have in hand and just hunker down and just become like a cozy little kitty cat in a chair with a bunch of cushions around me, doing my stitching and just reflecting. I can't reflect on any of this last year without thanking you and mentioning my deepest and most sincere thanks to all of you for your generous support. It was a year ago that this whole idea of the Mary 1840 St. Louis doll quilt project was being formulated and finalized, and I, in my wildest dreams, could never have imagined it would be so well received and so incredibly supported by all of you. And you know, some people are just now starting on their Mary 1840 St. Louis journey. Some of you deliberately waited until this time to start, and I think that's fantastic. Some of you, actually, there are some finishes. Those of you who started right away, people who either didn't buy the kit or purchased the kit and didn't get it right away because, you know, there was a little bit of time delay. I do still have kits for anyone else who wants to jump on board. But I am just so enjoying seeing your results, and I really look forward to hearing from those of you who have finished or are close to finishing. I want you to tell me, and I want you to tell the rest of the people participating on whatever level, because remember, some people are just participating as observers, and I welcome you and I thank you, and I'm so glad you're here. I think the ones who are doing, I want to know, what did you learn from this process? And as we go down the road and more people join, and those of you who are going to start, I want to hear what you learned from this process of doing something in a way that was much simpler, but yet maybe in some ways much more difficult, because the tools that you had at hand were so rudimentary if you chose to do it in that fashion, in the 1840s fashion. So I just really, truly cannot tell you what your love and affection and your response to this has meant to me. For all the projects and products I've presented here. I am just incredibly grateful. Truly, I hope you know through my words how deeply, deeply touched I am. I do want to hear from you on another level. This is the first time I've taught anything on a video format, and I've taught before, and at the end of my classes, my quilt classes, I've always asked for feedback. I always ask my students, my participants, to tell me, how I could improve, what they liked, what was challenging for them, what would have made this learning process easier, how can I improve as someone giving you instruction and helping to guide you through a project. Please let me know. I know I can improve in technology, and that's an ongoing learning curve for me. And I do strive to make that as easily accessible to you as possible. But please give me that feedback. I really, really covet that from you. I can always be contacted through my website, www.susanstanleystitchandtime.com. I can be contacted by email at smsquilter@comcast.net, and I can also be contacted through Instagram, which is Stanley Susan Messenger. Now those are the ways as of now that I have for you to contact me. So contact me, let me know your thoughts, let me know what I can do differently as we move forward. And please, if you are participating, even if you're participating as an observer, I want to hear from you. I want to see you posting about first stitches, first underscore stitches. I want to hear about your story, your experience with this on whatever level. So thank you again. Now let's talk about some future plans. So what do I have planned for you for 2024? I want you to know, first of all, that I have listened to your comments and your suggestions and your requests. And I thank you so much for them. And I have taken them to heart. I have deeply considered projects that I could craft around what you want. And I do want to hear from you as far as what you want for next year. So after the new year, I'll be revealing some of the new things that I have planned for you for 2024. And I have been working all fall on crafting some of these, and I'm super excited. I was bursting about Mary. I mean, this is just snowballing into more excitement, and I can't wait to share all of the future ideas with you. So please stay tuned. There are going to be celebrations next year. February is a huge month for me on Floss Tube. There will be First Stitches celebrations. There will be Floss Tube celebrations. It's going to be a fantastic year. I can't say if I'm more excited. Maybe I am equally as excited as I was last year, but I think maybe even more. I want you also to know I have had several requests, and I'm working on this with my web designer. I am working on compiling a newsletter because people want to know immediately when things are happening, and I completely appreciate that. The best methods I have at this moment are to subscribe to this channel, ring the notification bell so you know exactly when a new video is up, and all the current, most recent updates will be there for you. But I am working on compiling a newsletter with those of you who have contacted me through the website or purchased something through the website. So if you would like to be a part of that newsletter, so you're the first to know about new products, new classes, new things that I have to offer, please think about sending a message or joining me in that way, and I'll give more details in the future. All right, let's look at some of my future projects that I want to work on. I have 3 things kitted up that I'm considering for Christmas start and or New Year's start. Now, I probably should just do a blessing sampler in January, but I have so many other things on the go that I think I'm going to finish up. Pick one and finish it up. Not sure which one that is yet, But I am allowing myself just to take some very first stitches in one of these projects, and I'd like to share them with you because they're all just gorgeous. This one was something I considered for last year, the 1840 time period. It's Sarah Dawes. She's huge. Why? What is it about me and huge samplers? I don't know. But Sarah Dawes, it's a Hands Across the Sea sampler. I have seen this stitched. I've seen this partially stitched. In fact, something I'm going to show you later has this another person's version of it. Why am I drawn to this sampler? I think the women on the bottom and the bird, I think, are beautiful. But the border, I saw some of this border stitched, and it was just screaming to me. So, so beautiful. And I've always lived, I grew up in Southern California. The beach and shells and the ocean were part of my life and my experience. So the fact that this sampler has shells on it just intrigues me so much. And there are fabrics, which I don't own, I wish, from this 1840 time period that have shells, because the world was becoming more aware of each other, and shells were kind of an anomaly in some parts of the world, and so they were so fascinating and interesting, and so then they pop up in needlework and on fabric, and then they become covered on boxes, and they're just all a part of this 1840 rage and what was raging in that time period. So I guess that's what draws me in. Now, I'm not as enamored with the verse, so I'm really not sure if I'm going to stitch this and be true to it. I might be like, I don't know, I might just compress it. I might not use the verse. I definitely am drawn to the top and bottom borders, which look to be the same. I love the color changes, and I've chosen Russian tea cake and a Versoix Soie d'Alger for my materials. I don't have it put together yet because I'm just not sure if this is the one that's going to get the first stitches this holiday season. I think it's going to be this next one. This next one, as soon as I saw it, I thought I have to have this. Of course, if you stuck with me, you know that I am smitten by red and green and blue. Those are kind of my trifecta colors. This kind of checks all the boxes. It's a full coverage piece. It's needlework panel of fruit tree with 2 animals, 1690. That's not a time period I typically am drawn to, but I'm really drawn to this. The back shows the antique. There's something about those bursting red fruit. I'm not as enamored with the wolves. Now, these are wolves that apparently have become extinct. I believe in the last one was killed in Scotland in 1680. That's kind of a sad story. I'm not super attracted to that aspect of this, but I am just smitten with that tree and those fruit. The colors and I love the primitive nature of this drawing too. It's very, it just is very primitive and doesn't look super sophisticated, not super detailed. And I think there's going to be something very soothing about just a lot of repetitive full coverage as I just become very, into my thoughts and into reflecting. I think this will be a good one, but we'll see. So what I've chosen for this is another Legacy Linen Corkscrew Willow. And I have it's the 37 count. I'm in love with 37 count, 38 count, 40 count, and a Versoix Soie d'Alger. Making me super happy right now. So I think this will be I mean, look at those greens. Oh, and then that pop of red and a little bit of gold. It's just yummy. So that would be a fun thing to start and kind of a challenge. I've never done a full coverage. I've done some full coverage, and I'd like to become a little more proficient at making those stitches just flow beautifully from one to the next. And then another one that I have kitted up that, you know, Carol Saltbox. Thank you, Carol. You got me on this one. This is also, I'm considering doing it on corkscrew willow. This is Jane Atkinson, and this is also another earlier piece, 1780. This is an interpretation. This is not an exact replica of the antique, but that border, really, it is all about the border. I'm not in love with the Adam and Eve. I'm not in love with the snake, but that border is just divine. So I will start on the bottom right, which is what I typically do, and I am considering corkscrew willow again. I bought a nice big chunk so I could use it for both projects, and I do have these threads. Look at this palette with this kind of almost autumnal. Oh, these burnt reds and peaches, which were all the rage at that time, and greens. And again, the flowers on this one are very primitive and kind of unrefined, but there's something about that layering of color and the outlining and the way they pop on the linen. I just find it very appealing. So I also, I mean, I love this kind of tealy blue green. Anyway, so these are future potential starts that I'm considering. For one of them, I will start on Christmas Day, and then, you know, we'll see how far I go with the others. They might just sit until it's time. Let's look at my WIPS. So this last month, I was pretty monogamous with my stitching. I had my fingers doing lots of other things like little tiny festive needlework baskets and all kinds of things that you're going to find out about soon. I kind of carried over my black sampler November stitching into this month, December, and I plan to keep stitching on this project until Christmas Day when I start one of those things I just showed you. But I kept working on Anne Grimshaw. She's another huge sampler, and I have just been pulling her out in November for Black Sampler November. But this time I kind of couldn't put her away. She was very comforting, just stitching in that one color. The motifs of the Quaker motifs, there's balance and harmony to them, and they really, they're very soothing. So I made a little bit more progress, and I actually got across the bottom. So now I know the width of this goodie, this sampler, and I do have quite a bit of linen left. I would like to carry the motifs of the border up the side, so I kind of have a frame, and then I can work between the letters and numbers at the bottom and the motifs at the top. I'm, of course, really anxious to get to some of these motifs. Especially, I love the one with the swan. That's really calling to me. I typically like to frame my project with the border and use the border as jump off points to going into the sampler. Then I don't lose interest, and as you can see, I guess I don't have attention, good attention span, but I do jump around. I jump around in projects, and I jump around to what's calling me. And if something on the sampler is really calling me, I count over and I find a way to stitch that, because I find if I stitch what I'm passionate about, I'm much happier. I don't know. Are you like that? I know my mother would like me to be a little more disciplined, I think, and just stick with one thing and finish it. But anyway, so this has been really fun. I'm stitching on Legacy Linen, Russian Tea Cake. This is something that I kitted up at the attic. I think I've mentioned before, with the help of Jean, when I very first got back into cross stitch, and it's very special. And I'm using Noir, Veriswa Noir, for my thread, and like I said, it's just it's soothing. So I'm really pleased with this progress. I love the stark contrast. As I mentioned last time, I love the stark contrast. Now, there are a few mistakes, and I can't even find them now, but I just kind of made them work. I made them, if it was off by 1 on the right, I made it off by 1 on the left, and it worked. So the width of the motif hasn't changed, just the elements within it. So my counting will work. So that's what I've been working on. And for me, with a lot of my projects, and I do like to get things done, but a lot of my work that I do is long-term and huge. And there's something, especially this time of year, about slowing down, taking stock of yourself, your thoughts, your projects, what matters in life to you, what matters in life in your stitching, slowing down, and not doing as much, but doing it well. And so that really speaks to me at this time of year as well. I want to give you the doll quilt update for Mary 1840 project. I have posted the binding tutorial, and I've given you 3 methods on how to approach your binding. Method 1 is what I learned for my very first quilt. It is the most doable method for someone starting out on their quilting journey. And I hope that you will take a look at all 3 and take really a lot of time to consider what method you would like to try. I've given you another method that I feel is the most historically accurate based on the antique doll quilts that I own. And then the final method is a modern method that is used today and is much more complicated and probably more advanced. So this is my gift to you, these tutorials, so that you can use them as a resource in the future for whatever you're doing. In fact, if you are doing the Mary Bracknell needle roll that you are going to put in your work basket, or any kind of needle roll or stitched roll that you're going to put in your basket, and you want to finish it with a binding, the binding tutorial will give you help on how to apply that and make it look nice and finished. So I want to show you now an example of an antique doll quilt that has method number 2 on it, so you can see what I'm talking about in real life. So this is the doll quilt that kind of inspired the Mary project, and loosely, and it's later, a little bit later than 1840. This color showed up around 1870, a little bit later in the century. But I want to show you this curved binding that I talk about in method number 2. So you can see that is not a crisp point. They've just applied the binding and gone around in a curve, and there's little tiny tucks not a mitered corner and not what we consider appropriate for today. And you know what? It's special and it's a treasure and it's just fine. So I wanted to show that to you because I think it's fun. And this is something that would be very doable for a child. And I think for any of you who are doing the project and making a quilt for the first time. I want to talk to you about this quilt behind me. This quilt behind me, you are only seeing a tiny snip of, because this quilt is 111 by 111. It's huge. It's absolutely huge. So I'm going to insert a tiny video that gives you kind of a panorama of what this quilt looks like. And then I'll explain why these birds are standing on their head. So here's a video. So, all right, so you can see there's a lot more going on this quilt than what you can see in this photo or this picture right here of me. And the center of the quilt is kind of a compass, a mariner's type, not a mariner's, but a type of a compass block. And the border is this long, sweeping, very chunky, very wide vine with a bunch of flowers. And then there's all these birds. And the bird is basically the same bird, just in different positions on the branch in different ways. This quilt was drafted by two women who were the Quilted Crow Girls. They are no longer in business, Leonie Bateman and Deidre Bon Abel. Deidre is Hat Creek Quilts. And they drafted this from an antique. And this quilt was likely circa 1850. This red and green color palette was highly, highly popular during that time. And it really started in the Baltimore area. Baltimore, Maryland was the hub of the Baltimore album quilts. We will talk more about at some point. This is something that I believe came, this idea of these red and green quilts, of course, swept across the country, and everyone wanted to be in the height of fashion with their quilts, and they wanted to be like the Baltimore ladies, because the Baltimore ladies were the tip top of fashion and everything that was trending. And so this is a much more primitive version of something that you would have seen on the East Coast. Now, I'm showing you this red and green quilt because right now, at this time of year, we associate the holidays and Christmas especially with red and green, but that was not always so. Red and green has become known as the Christmas colors, and it was not always that way. And in an episode, I think a couple years ago, maybe I'll link the information below, I did specifically talk about the colors red and green and their meaning and their significance and how they came to be known as Christmas colors. But this quilt was originally done in all solids. And if you noticed in the little video snippet that I showed you, I chose to use patterned fabrics. I did stick with the similar palette, and I tried to, if the bird was a red bird with a yellow wing, I tried to keep true to that just so I would get the same overall look as the original, but this is definitely my interpretation of it. And in the border, I think I used several different greens, and they flowed from one pattern into another, and you know, I did some fun things. There's a lot of quiet white space in this quilt for hand quilting work. This quilt is hand appliqued and hand quilted, and it really is a monster. It has a wool batting in it. It's nice and warm, and I plan to use it on my bed during this holiday season. It's also fun to bring out in the springtime just because of the birds. But these red and green colors and dyes were widely available. This poison green I've talked about, this turkey red, the chrome yellow, the cheddar. And, you know, if you look at some of your stitching, your cross stitch work and your other needlework from that time period, I bet you're going to see some similarities in the colors, and because these things do cross over. And birds just seem to be a theme that just never stops. So, and I love birds. So anyway, this is my quilt that I'm sharing with you. The dyes during that time for these colors were stable and available. Toxic, yes, and improved upon, yes. You know, good thing for us, because they were not always health friendly. But the original pattern is called Cousin's Walk, and like I said, it was drafted and actually traced from an antique quilt, and I interpreted it with my own fabrics. It was a lot of fun. It was a long project, like everyone I always seem to do, but I'm so glad I did it, and I learned a lot, because I imagined these were not originally drawn on, I don't believe, on paper. They were probably drawn as they went on the fabric and laid out on the fabric. And so therefore you have some borders, if you go back to the video and notice, some of the borders are very densely covered with flowers, and other parts of the border are very sparse. There's really no balance per se in that aspect. This swooping vine idea repeats itself, but there's a lot of whimsy to this, and imperfection and quirkiness, but I find that charming and interesting. So that's my quilt. I should also mention that every documentation book on quilts from across the country, there's always red and green quilts featured, because they were such a rage for friendship quilts and commemorative quilts during the 1840 to 1860 time period. Okay, I have this most incredible thing to share with you, and it's going to be challenging, but not impossible to show you. This is my festive sewing decoration that I gave you a little bit of a preview on in the beginning of this video, and I have been wanting to do this for quite some time. I was reading, like you know, about sewing methods from the 1840s and even earlier, and one of the things that grabbed me was the fact that during that time, gifts of sewing items were exchanged and hung on a tree during the holiday season, because there was such a close attachment to the work that was done with your hands and the necessity for this work. And like I've mentioned before, there were no sewing machines for domestic use, and people had to sew everything by hand. Mending, creating, you name it, it was done by hand. So I think there was such an awareness of the work of your hands and how much that was needed and how much it was a part of you. So I wanted to create this Victorian feather tree using sewing items, and it just snowballed. I gathered everything that I had, and I invited over a friend of mine who is incredibly gifted in display and decor and just, you know, doing arrangements. And with her help, I was able to put this together. Now, one of the things about Victorian trees, feather trees, is they're just dripping with items. And you can see this one is not any different. I couldn't believe how much this little tree absorbed. I mean, truly, I was shocked at all that has been put on here. Probably one of my favorite items is this sewing bird, and then his friend down below hiding in the branches. And that was my friend's idea. She just took them and just applied them to the trunk, and I just love how they turned out. So I have tape measures, retractable tape measures. I have scissors, and these are part of my collection that I've collected for years. I can't believe how many of them. I mean, they're almost like 4 or 5 items on each branch. And then I had these thimbles that I think were utilitarian, probably factory thimbles, and I thought they would just make the most adorable little bells. Now, I didn't do a very good job hanging them or creating them because they hang kind of crooked, but they're sweet. And then I found this lot of antique needles, and so they were new old stock. They hadn't been used. They're needle books, and they just had the right colors and charm for this tree. I have a strawberry, a silver capped strawberry from earlier times. Like I said, there are scissors. There's just, and then of course drippings of these mercury glass beads and icicles. I'm not going to be able to put this away. It's going to be out all year, I think. I don't think I can dismantle it. 2 little items that never made it onto the tree, but I'm going to show you, are these silver, they're probably from the early 1900s. These little silver pin cushions. They're just so tiny and sweet. And they just sit at the bottom of the tree for now. So I am just, it was so fun to create. Like I said, I don't think I can take it apart. It might just get something to cover it and it gets stored away, but then I'll miss seeing all my items. I don't know if I've given you a good glimpse of each item. Hopefully in the video you get to see things a little bit up close. But you know, if you're tempted at all or inspired, I would start collecting now, or you know, perhaps find what you have on hand and just start creating. It's a lot of fun and very festive. It's hard when you're out shopping for Christmas to not find things for yourself. Do you guys have that problem? I want to share with you some of my new acquisitions, my haul, and these are things, you know, that I purchased well before this month, but I haven't had a chance to share them with you yet. And I always feel kind of guilty around Christmas time, you know, having new things, or I don't know why, but it's just, you know. Anyway, so one item, as soon as I saw these pop up, I had to have them. These are the Juliet scissors, and I believe you can get them at the Attic and other needlework stores. They have a beautiful leather case. that's embossed. Very nice. But I plan to do some sewing, different themed sewing baskets and containers. And these are just so delicate and gorgeous. I just thought I needed to add them to my collection. So, what needleworker wouldn't love a pair of these? Gorgeous. Gorgeous. And then I have 2 books, and I know other people have shared these with you, and I want to share them as well because I find these books amazing on many levels. They are legacy books. They are books that share the needlework of families separated by hundreds of years, 300 years, I believe, between these 2 needleworkers, or more than 2. But the first one is Choice and Precious Work, Treasures from the Schoolroom, 1650 to 1750, Elizabeth Hall and Friends. And this, I want to know more about all of these people who are represented in this book and why the family preserved this collection and added to it over the years. I find fascinating. This family obviously values the work of the hands and needlework and sewing items in particular. They've all been stored up and saved, and notes have been written and documentation has been attached to so many of the items in here. And they're beautiful and fascinating in and of themselves, but the story that is attached and the true story that's attached, I'm sure, now, just because an antique item has a note on it does not mean that that note is valid. And I think that this has all been vetted and checked, but please know that when you're shopping that, you have to do your own research to make sure that that's valid information. What I find so fascinating about this is not only that the family saved these items and in a collection, because they are incredible. They've all now been given, they're all now residing at Whitney Antiques, and I'm hoping beyond hope, not that I have anything to do with it, that they will stay together, because this is the work of a family and friends over a 100-year time period, with stories and the ability to research the people individually from all those years ago and try to understand a little bit about their life and why, and understand why these items meant so much. These are items we might use and have in a modern form that would probably be discarded, but this family savored them, and they are a part of this family's legacy. That just, I find incredibly emotionally, it's just very sentimental and very interesting. So I am really looking forward to reading about that history and understanding these people who were Quakers, who didn't fit a mold. We think sometimes we know everything about people, and especially from the past, and we don't. And there's always more to learn, and we need to be open to whatever we uncover. That book is just a treasure trove of history. This book that I'm going to share with you, and I know you've heard about it before, is a more contemporary treasure trove. And this is Objects de Folie by Susie Miller. The work embodied in it is by Susie Miller. And if you've heard this spoken about before, you know this is her work that she's done in her lifetime, and her son, who obviously was very moved by watching her working with her hands all his life, took it upon himself to document her work in this beautiful pictorial format. And the projects that Susie Miller chose, I find the projects people choose as fascinating as the actual accomplishment. Why she chose some of these projects and where she went with them, I find intriguing, and I'm very curious because there's some similar projects. We have very similar taste in projects, and she's done projects that I've done and aspire to do. So this is a legacy, and so is this. Separated by 300 years. But equally as valuable, and especially to the family, but not only to them, but to us, and to understand why these people, each of them, all of them, chose to do what they did, and why families retained all these items and made them a part of their heirloom legacy that they passed down from generation to generation. If nothing else, this is incredible eye candy on both levels. Both of these books are incredible eye candy, but also just something that I hope will inspire you to value the work of your hands and find a way to document what you've spent your life doing with your hands, and for future generations, and begin your legacy and begin telling your story through the things that you've done. So I highly recommend all of these items. All right, a shop update. I am so thrilled that I've had so much interest in the things that I've been offering, and I just can't thank you enough. Again, I just truly am so deeply, deeply grateful from the bottom of my heart for your support and your interest in what I'm offering. Like I said, I am working on getting a newsletter, so you'll be aware of new items through an email as soon as they post, as soon as they're available. The thing that I've had a lot of questions about are these textile interpreter collection packets. I've released 2. At this point, there are 2. One is the general store series, and there will be more general store collections coming out. And the second one was a wintertide series, and there will be more wintertide collections coming out. So these were set 1 of general store and wintertide. And as we go through the seasons, and I find fabrics that I feel will work for your finishing, for your small projects, your pin pillows, your drums, or if you are a quilter and you want to add a wide array of scraps to your collection and you just need little bits, this is a great way to start. It's also kind of a library because I've dated these, and it's a resource. So however you choose to use this, I've had so many questions, and yes, I will be continuing to create more. Now, will I be able to repeat these? No. The way the fabric industry works is so different than cross-stitch. Fabrics are printed, they are sold, they are dispersed, and that's it. They're not printed again. Most shops like to turn over their fabrics within a year. They're gone. All right, so some of these are out of print and not available anymore. And I do my best to make these collections really special, and I'm sourcing fabrics all the time, and I will make future collections that I think are just as special. But if you are considering them, you want to get them right away. And then, of course, each one is going to have this little bit of trim that kind of complements the set. So that's the Textile Interpreter Collection. There also have been requests for thread papers, and I am going to load thread papers on my shop so that you can create your own thread papers using the paper that I used in the kit. I'm so delighted that I have people writing me and telling me they're setting up their own little Mary 1840 basket. They're trying to recreate this whole work basket concept. They are putting their threads into thread papers and wrapping them, and I want and they would like the same paper that I used in the kit because they'd like to add more threads and to their collection. So you'll be getting enough to make 10, and I just started doodling on this one just for fun. I don't have any evidence that these thread papers were decorated in this way, but you know, you can do whatever you'd like. And then in episode 34, I show you how to fold them and create them. So yeah, create a work basket with thread papers. I think it's a great way to yet again try to relate to that time period and learn from doing. Peaceful Partridge little tiny festive needlework baskets were a huge success, and I have back orders. Mr. Robert LaHaye is working diligently to put more of those little baskets together for me so I can get them to you. However, they will not be ready until 2024. So I'm sorry I can't get them any sooner than that. Anyway, thank you so much for your interest, and I'm thrilled. And then again, the Mary 1840 kit is still available if you're interested. So that's what's going on in the shop. You know, I savor your comments, and thank you so much for all of you who do write in, especially telling me your first stitches stories and your stitching experiences. I always ask before I share, and I have a comment that I'd like to share with you that I found so heartfelt and meaningful. This person wrote to me after she purchased and started the Mary kit, and she said I could share this with you. She said, "My precious grandmother gave me the love of needle, thread, and fabrics. She didn't quilt, but I would sit at the foot of her stool as she sewed clothing, and she gave me her scraps and taught me to sew by hand and embroider. I'm so very thankful to her. She gave me the love of all the things. I did give it up in 2010 and thought I'd never pick up a needle again. We lost our youngest son to cancer just 1 week past his 19th birthday after a 2-year grueling battle. I was heartbroken. Needless to say, I never wanted to do anything again. He went with me to quilt shops and watched me when I sewed when he was little. In 2018, my oldest son had my first grandchild, a beautiful girl. When she was born, it gave me renewed hope. She is interested in stitching. I'm so tickled. We're working on making X's on plastic canvas for cross stitch. When she's ready, we will make her own doll quilt, following your lessons together. She now has a 2-year-old sister. I can't wait until we all stitch together. I'm so sorry to send you a long chapter in my life, but I wanted you to know how much I love your knowledge, expertise, and all the absolutely beautiful work you share with us." And then she thanks me and says, "You're a treasure to those of us that love all things with needle and thread and glorious fabric." I just thought, I was so touched, of course, and could so relate to the healing power of your needle and sewing and stitching. And I wanted to share that with you. For next time, I'll be showing you what I decided to stitch for my Christmas start. and I will reveal some of the things that I have going on for 2024 that I know you're going to be so excited to hear about and participate in. And until then, have the best holiday and just cherish every moment with the people you love and make time for stitching. Bye-bye, friends.